Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Learning Lab session, Inclusion First. So thank you for choosing this session, Inclusion First, Rethinking Education for Peace and Stability. Well, great choice, obviously, and I hope that it will be a great session. Um, to go a bit about how the session will unravel. So the aim of this session is to try and reframe the narrative and acknowledging the fundamental contributions from inclusion to education and peace. It will also illustrate with concrete examples from the field in what inclusive systems deliver for stronger and safer societies. It will also showcase that inclusion is protective, peace building, and brings social cohesion. And also how it can be innovative and quality instructional design in order to help to build back better. Okay, so to get deeper into this topic, we have with us two great presenters. Both are experts in their own fields. And hang on to your seats because they have a lot of qualifications, which I'm going to try to list now without forgetting anything, and apologies in advance if I forget any. So first, we have Sandrine Bohanjako. Sandrine brings over 25 years of professional experience in education across diverse international contexts. She has held roles in teaching, project management, and consultancy through the Middle East, Central Asia, Asia, Africa, and with several NGOs, donors also, and international agencies. Currently, she serves as an inclusive education global specialist with humanity and inclusion, and her work mainly focuses on providing technical support in emergency settings and advocating for education of children with disabilities within global networks. Um, and we are also really grateful to have an online presenter who's Maran Al-Tawil, who holds a master's degree in democracy and human rights, a Bachelor of Arts in Public Administration for Birzeit University. Mahan has worked with several organizations, including Applied Research Institute in Jerusalem, the Rehabilitation Program, Central Elections Committees, and the East Jerusalem YMCA Rehabilitation Program, sorry, contributing to research on disability rights, media, employment, and access to information. Maran has also managed the Economic Empowerment Program for Persons with Disabilities at BISR, which is Bethlehem Arab Society for Rehabilitation. And with over 14 years of experience in the Palestine's disability and rehabilitation sector, he has collaborated extensively with national and international stakeholders and since 2020, he has served as a director in the field, advancing inclusion and rehabilitation initiatives. So thank you for being here online with us, Mahan. I don't know if you can hear us or if you can answer yet, but we know that you're here, and thank you for that. Okay, so now just a few precisions about how the presentation will, the session, sorry, will unravel. Each presentation will last approximately 30 minutes, and there will be a time for discussion at the end of the 30 minutes, and also before we wrap up. So please note or keep your questions in mind. Same goes for all the people that are online with us. And our two guests will answer them at the end of the presentations. So now, without further ado, I'll now hand the mic. She has it already, so perfect. To Sandrine Bohanjako, who will present what inclusive systems deliver for strong and safer societies, and tell us how equity and diversity are key pillars of the solutions to current world ailments.
Thank you so much, François. All right. Thank you very, not sure how it worked, but thank you very much. Please keep the time for me because when you give me a mic, you don't know when you get it back. Um, so yeah, so the topic of the presentation is really to try to tell you what I believe, but I'm not the only one. Inclusion brings to security, to peace, to social cohesion, to ensure stronger and safer society. So, oh yes, I got the power. Uh, I was asked a question last week at another conference, and the question was, what's the main inequality? Difficult question to answer. But to me, the main inequality is all the children that are not there. All day long, we've been talking about the difficult situation of children in temporary learning space, in schools, how complicated it was. But many children are not there. Actually, we got a nice report from UNESCO that was issued in February as the Global Education Monitoring Report. And it says, worst numbers that we've heard so far, it's 273 million children and young people that are out of school. Huge bulk worldwide. It represents one child out of 6. Huge. And yet, fewer than 1 out of 10 countries has an education financing approach that really is trying to target and prioritize equity. So basically, most countries are not directing the resource where they are most needed. And I think it should give us a pause, because financing, it's not something neutral. If you don't actively try to correct inequity, you are just reproducing them. Pause. And as we've all been discussing since this morning, conflict is not a side issue anymore. Used to be. Now it's really a concern worldwide in so many countries. And this is just adding to those numbers. And this is creating the data and the situation for millions of children today. So all our systems are still struggling to see how to respond to those at the right pace and scale that we would like to see. But as the time is going, I think if there's one message that the report was telling from UNESCO is that without equity, access will remain out of reach. So we can't just continue, and we all know the funds are being cut. If there's a question about how they should be redirected, maybe it's probably where they're most needed. My idea really today is to try to reframe a bit the narrative because when we talk about inclusion, it's always it's so cute, it's so nice, it's a nice add-on if we have money left. Thank you very much. But I really think there's something fundamental in inclusion that's transforming and that's really key to education and peace in general, not just for the ones that are excluded of it. We've seen finance is not neutral, but education isn't either. At the same time, it holds transformative power. I'm quoting Tamara Jacod, my colleague. So we've seen it, I don't want to insist, especially if you were in the previous session and there this morning, we know that inequity and inclusion fuels conflict. But yet we have inclusive principle. And the inclusive principle, they really try to ensure collective commitment and to build a more peaceful society. What's important in inclusion is that everyone is acknowledged and supported to develop his unique potential, whatever it is. And I really think equity and diversity are key pillars to the problems we're facing now. So I'm going to try to bring 5 points. There's probably many more. But I want to share how protective it is. I really think inclusion is preventive peacebuilding, social cohesion, impact and innovation that you will always find in inclusion, the quality of instruction, and how it can build back better, hopefully. It's protective, we know. We know that equity promotes equal access and reduce all the grievance. Obviously, if you are excluded from school, and it's been said this morning, so I won't insist, but you might be recruited by an army, you're going to be married too early, you're going to be pregnant, you might be put on the work market. So, and this will create grievance. If you're not from the right ethnic, it will create grievance. If you have disability, it's going to stop being annoying to be excluded all the time. So what inclusive education is trying to do is to provide equal opportunities for all. And when it does that, it does address some historical injustice and structural inequalities. Recent crises and wars have put some children out of school, but some children have been out of school for decades. Children with disability being one of the group, but not the only one. Inclusive education, by its flexibility, ensures continuities in time of crisis. And I think, and it was said this morning, it's important to insist on the role of teacher in this, because they're the one maintaining high quality. And one of the things with inclusive education is really targeting also the well-being of the children. Of course, we need to learn, but school, like we've said, is much more than just the academics. It's social cohesion. We have a saying in inclusion, we say when you learn together, you learn to live together. And that's the whole purpose. You know, if I grew up with a friend at school that had a disability and I become, whatever, an architect, when I create a building, I will think of him. So it's really important that they are here, that everybody with its own difference is here. I think it's really protecting the future potentially of those children, but our future globally. I think there's a number that's really striking in this report of UNESCO as well, is that it's going to cost us all. If we have to speak finance, 10 trillion is the annual global estimates cost of the skills deficit. This is what we're going to miss, and this is what it's going to cost everybody. And this is creating a risk, obviously, for peace. Oh, sorry, I have to. Oh, I didn't change. Did I? For a while. Oh, for a long while. You've been lost, sorry. So this is where I was. Yeah, sorry, I'm changing for me, but because I'm getting old, with all that experience and my white hair, I can't see over there. All right. So just looking at the positive, there are some responses. So I'm going to show a couple of each time. It stands for Humanity and Inclusion, or that you may know as Handicap International that I'm working for. So the cost I was talking about is costing a lot to some countries, and Chad is a good example because it's nearly 58% of a GDP by 2030 that they are risking by not educating children. So the way we try to respond is like many organizations, we having, for example, we have some formal and non-formal education, and we have these inclusive child-friendly spaces, for example, in Gotu Kongua, this one. And it's a place where obviously children can play, dance, play soccer, doing sport, but they also can have relaxation technique, and we have private room to welcome children that would have additional issues that we need to refer. And it's also really a nice way to catch up children, because if children don't go to school, but there is a friendly space, they will come to the friendly space. And this is where we try to identify, like, oh, you're not in school, why is that? And this is how also we're trying to catch them. Ouais. Merci François. Inclusion brings social cohesion. I think what really inclusion is bringing is that it fosters social cohesion and mutual understanding. We all have differences, and we're all coming from different ethnic, religious, socio-economic background. And when you can go to school together rather than one goes to a private school very rich with a lot of means, the other one are going to the poorer one. If we can all be together in a classroom, it really changed the way you see the world. It did for me. I'm coming from the suburb of Paris, not the rich one. And even though we had a rich community not so far, and we were pretty mixed at the time. I'm talking about a very long time, in the 80s, long time ago. But it really changes my mind, because I was coming from the not so disadvantaged, but just okay. But my friends were coming from most disadvantaged area, and it completely changed my life, because my parents was like, "Oh, you're gonna go to a summer camp." I was like, "No, I'm gonna work just like my friends, because I don't want to be the only one to be stupid and not know about the world." So it changed everything for me to be with those friends. So I think it's really key that we bring this together. So it really helped reducing all the stereotype and prejudices and xenophobia and a lot of it, which are at the roots of conflicts. I'm just speeding up for time. But I think it also brings inclusion into the school practice, so from the teacher in the class, but also all the governance structure. We see that very often in inclusion. The teachers are well trained, but the children don't even pass registration, to go there. So what's the point of training teacher for kids that are not there? So I think it's really important, and it was said also this morning, when we succeed to pass on something to children, they bring it back to the community. So it really helps changing community. So it's really important, and we're always trying to do it at HI with a twin, what we call the twin track strategy, where obviously we respond to the specific needs of a learner, but we're also trying to mainstream and change the system. Just sharing quickly one example from Ecuador, because this project was really on social cohesion. So I won't go into the details of this program. It's still ongoing. But really, we're also working with children with disability, but also other type of marginalization. They've been excluded from mainstream school for many reasons. And one of them is the eroded trust of the parents and the children in the school. There are many places where parents don't even believe in the power of education anymore. So there's been a lot of efforts, but there's been some provision of inclusive educational workshops, psychoeducational sessions, some catch-up programs for children who needed them. And the results are already quite significant, and they really show an improvement in the academic and psychosocial skills. So I think it's really interesting, because each time you target the most marginalized, you're actually creating a norm. And I really encourage people to usually start with disability, because if your school is in capacity to welcome children with disability, it can welcome a lot of other difficulties. Um, I won't go through all the slides, but what really interesting is that we related on a framework on how trust works to create social cohesion. And what's really important is to work both at the horizontal level, but also at the vertical level. So horizontal is really that within the community, making sure there is solidarity. Some parent might help other children to come. There's a mutual support. We respect each other difference within the school community. But it's really also this vertical one, how you re-establish a trust between the communities, the children, and the education authorities that is in many places broken.
Click.
Yeah, quickly, if you're interested, Ecuador has produced, together with the Ministry of Education, Sport and Culture, with a child, a nice module that's intended for family to see how we can support the education of children, but also rebuild this trust and social cohesion. I wanted to ask a question. Have you ever heard about the curb effect? No, no. So maybe people online, but in the room, not so much. So the curb effect is the red color that you can see when you're walking on the sidewalk. And sometimes you see this curb effect. And it's actually very practical when you have a luggage, or you have a baby cart, or you have difficulties to walk because you break your leg or anything. Well, there's actually an innovation coming from disability, because obviously if you have a wheelchair, you don't like to jump from sidewalks. So that's my little introduction to my next section, which is that inclusion has a positive impact, but is also very innovative in itself. So I won't describe all the studies, but you have some referred in the PowerPoint that I'm sure we will share. And we have consistent and compelling evidence of the positive impact of inclusive education. So it's not just my wishful thinking. There are studies that are demonstrating that there's positive impact on employment, on stability, on income at individual level, and therefore to society as a whole. There are two nice studies in Nepal and the Philippines. And also sometimes that we keep forgetting, we're always thinking how much does it cost? But the question is also how much does it cost if we're not doing it? So another terrible number is that the cost of exclusion is actually considerable. It's a loss of GDP from 1 to 7%, for example, if people with disability are not included into education and labor. We are missing 10% of the population, 7% of GDP. So just a food for thought, like we say. And I was talking about all those innovations that are in many of your everyday life that you maybe don't know. They're coming from the disability field. But we're using closed caption in most of our webinars. Well, closed caption obviously come from disability for people who cannot hear. That's where it comes from. The text to speech on your phone is coming from the disability world. Audiobook that you listen when you're driving, coming also from us. Maybe use a toothbrush, electric toothbrush, well, coming from the disability field when you cannot do this movement. Those curbs. And a lot more that I won't have time to describe. But yeah, this is to demonstrate that we are innovative. Just one example from the field, ECHA is working in the camps of Kakuma in Kenya. We had a partnership with Ekitabu a little while ago, and we've been working on accessible digital learning. And I won't go into all the detail again, but what was really interesting in this project, for example, is that we have digitalized the curriculum for the camps, obviously, where we were working, so that it was accessible to all schools and teachers. But now that they are digitalized and available online, they're actually available online for the whole of Kenya. So this is an innovation that's coming from the camps of Kakuma, but that's useful to Kenya. I have a blank page, but oui. Okay, this should have been a quiz, but I had to transform into a PDF, so you have the answers before the questions. But I wanted to ask you if you could name a few pedagogues, very famous people in education, and I was expecting some names like, I'm listening to you. Maria Montessori comes very often first, but we're in Belgium, so I was expecting maybe the Crowley. Yeah, we have, maybe you've heard about Itard, about Séguin, about Freinet, Piaget, and what they have in common is that they all worked with children with disabilities, or children with difficulties. Steiner, exactly. And that makes a whole difference, because the business as usual is not working. So you have to think differently, and you have to find another way. And I've just described what inclusive education is. It's to find another way if this one is not working, is to create variety, is to try again. And really the benefit of, I'm a fond of Maria Montessori, really, because when we think of manipulation, and a lot is about manipulation with Maria Montessori, obviously indispensable for children with disability, but so useful to all other children. So really amazing. That brings us to the fact that it is, the way we say inclusive education, we used to say a couple of years ago, inclusive education is just quality education, and I really think it's true. I think it really emphasizes critical thinking, dialogue, problem solving, enabling the student to resolve their dispute also non-violently. It can be curricula that include peace education, human rights, civic engagement. It was very well said this morning, so I won't insist, but it's creating a culture on non-violence and helping you to solve the conflict you may have. Just very quickly, some instructional. We both have a difficulty with this word. I will go with instruction. Key picture. It promotes really learner-centered approach, and you may be familiar with the universal design for learning, also coming from disability field. Yeah. It implements reasonable accommodation for all. It's solution seeking. It's always trying to present variety. It really cultivates a culture of creative thinking and critical, really going beyond the talk and choke that we've seen so often, um, and really helps children to manage their emotion as well. This said, I think it's really a key element because instruction is done by teachers, and teachers are so central. We keep trying to improve mechanism and everything, and we surely do. Infrastructure should be better, all of it for sure. But they are the fundamental leverage to quality education, and in crisis even more. And I wanted to quote Sir Ken Robinson, that maybe some of you know, who's saying, "No school is better than its teachers." So whatever we do, if we're not investing in teachers, it's not going to work. And I very often say to the team, yeah, we could buy more benches and everything, but I prefer to invest in a teacher under a tree than having a very nice school with poor teachers. Definitely. Just to show you, yeah, a couple of pictures. My last mission was in Syria, end of last year, and I had a chance to go to the northeast area, and to visit a couple of non-formal education centers. And those teachers are amazing. It's a collaboration with Concern Worldwide, and we've been trying to work with the children that are still excluded from education, many reasons. Either the schools are completely destroyed, either there are too many mines around to send anybody close. It can be also, like on the second picture, there are girls from a very remote community living in the slums, and they are working children. So they are picking cotton most of the time. So we need to adapt the schedule, for example, to see when they can come and doing it. And obviously, we welcoming also children with disability that cannot access some of the building for just simple access. Coming to my fifth point, I think inclusive education is really also an opportunity to build back better curricula to make sure that we strengthen democratic institution, to have values of fairness, participation, accountability, everything that we need to keep democracy alive. Um, it can break the cycles of violence when you welcome children from excluded community back into the school. It was also very well said this morning. You're appeasing the conflict, and you're preventing tomorrow's conflict. It brings economic stability and peace, I think we've said, but like it was very well said by the young people this morning, if you don't have access to education, you don't have an opportunity in life later. And also, we haven't talked a lot today, but in crisis is also a lot of climate issues, climate crisis. So it's an opportunity to create schools that are more accessible, but also climate resilience. And in the PowerPoint, you'll find a nice example of the work that has been done in Uganda by HI to modelize a nice school with accessibility norm. I think I've said it also. I don't want to take more time to this one. I don't want to take more time because I want to leave all the time to Mahan, who's going to talk to us from Palestine directly. I just wanted to let you with this sentence. It's a sentence I saw on a graffiti in the street one day, and it was saying, "What if the cure for cancer is stuck in the brain of a child who cannot access school?" I leave it to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Uh, yeah, thank you very much, Sandrine, for this really rich, and I think it was insightful for everyone here. So I don't know if there's a first batch of questions already now. All right, so we'll keep all the questions for the end, if that's okay with all of you. And so now we'll just now hand over to Mahan Al Tawil, who is online and who will bring us into the Palestine reality of today, and to share about the situation and, yeah, the disruption of education, and all the difficulties faced by all learners, and in particular learners and children with disabilities. Man will present inclusive solution implemented by BASR and all the lessons that have been learned since then. So thank you so much, Bahan. Yeah, I think you're online now. Yeah, we can see you, for being with us today. The microphone is yours, Bahan. So please go ahead.
Thank you so much, and hello everyone. I want to thank first everyone who arranged this important conference. We always say that education is the gate of all rights. So my name is Mahrani Tawil. I'm from Palestine. I'm the director of the CPR, Community-Based Rehabilitation Program at Bethlehem Arab Society for Rehabilitation. In this session, I will highlight or shed light the right to access to education under conflict, with a focus on children with disabilities in Palestine. In this presentation, I will highlight more about the reality of persons with disability in Palestine, and education in general in Palestine, specifically the question of education for persons with disabilities. I will highlight more on Basra's education unit and its interventions, and the effects of the ongoing war on the access to education, and strategies and approaches that we use to tackle the right to education and lessons learned. You can skip to the next slide.
Oh, can I do it? Oh,
Okay,
not me.
more. As for the context of disability in Palestine, since 1948, Palestine is under occupation and have been exposed to protracted humanitarian challenges to political instability, economic crisis, and restricted access to essential services. Since October 2023, the situation has severely deteriorated with increased Israeli military actions, casualties, settler violence, displacement, demolitions, and movement restrictions. These developments have severely impacted vulnerable groups, especially persons with disabilities. The official statistics shows that there are more than 115,000 persons with disabilities in Palestine. This is prior to the recent war. However, we believe that we are sure that the number exceeds what is highlighted by the Palestinian Central Bureau of Statistics. For example, one of the studies done by Humanity and Inclusion states that there are more than 400 thousands of persons with disabilities in Palestine, and it is considered the highest ratio of persons with disabilities in the region compared to the population, and this is definitely due to the Israeli military occupation. And since the October 2023, persons requiring rehabilitation and disability-related services has been significantly increased, including educational services. To illustrate more regarding the situation of persons with disabilities in Palestine, uh, here are a diagram of some of the figures which represent the level of marginalization that people with disabilities face on a daily basis. Next slide, please. There are more than 35% of people with disabilities in Palestine are illiterate. They don't know how to read or write. 35% of them have never enrolled in schools. 90% are unemployed due to the accumulative marginalization. That's why we always say that education is the gate of all rights. it deprives you from having a better future, better and good economic opportunities. 70% of people with disabilities in Palestine are unable to use public transportation due to lack of accessibility. 40% of children with disabilities under 15 years old have dropped out of schools, and more than 39% of people with disabilities aged 16 years and over have dropped out of schools. The main barriers that facing children with disabilities in Palestine could be summarized by three main reasons. The first one is the weak implementation of disability legislations. Despite the fact that we have the laws, we have different laws, but unfortunately, there are limited enforcement mechanisms and weak accountability system, and insufficient political will to advance disability rights. Secondly, the negative and societal attitudes. Unfortunately, disability is often stigmatized and viewed through charitable or medical perspective rather than a right-based approach. And thirdly, the lack of accessibility. All of our public services, schools, streets are inaccessible, and also there are informational barriers that restrict access to schools, healthcare, transportation, and community participation. The education system in Palestine is really in a severe crisis, both in Gaza and the West Bank, and also in East Jerusalem, and facing significant challenges that endanger the future of thousands of children. The ongoing war, movement restrictions, displacement, systematic violence have greatly hindered children access to education, depriving children from having a very well good structural education. The statistic shows a devastating fact of the impact of the war on Gaza. Here are some of the numbers and figures. There are more than 650,000 school-aged children currently lack access to formal education. More than 39,000 students were unable to sit for their Tawjihi exam. 95% of Gaza school buildings have been damaged completely or partially, and nearly 88% require major reconstruction before functioning again. As for the human cost, more than 12,000 students were killed in the last war, and more than 90,000 students got injured. More than 400 staff, teachers have been killed, and more than 2,600 have been injured. And in Gaza alone, there are more than 1.2 million children in Gaza require mental health and psychosocial support now. As for the West Bank and East Jerusalem, also there's a severe escalation of violence that has significantly increased. For example, since the 7th of October, more than 85 students were killed, more than 500 got injured, and more than 280 got arrested. As for teachers, 3 teachers have been killed, 18 got injured, and 100, around 50 got arrested. In addition, we have witnessed a lot of violence incidents targeting education and school attacks through armed incursions into schools, weapon firing, detentions of students or school staff. And these all figures have been documented by UN agencies and a very well reputed international NGOs. So since the October 23, if I want to talk about the West Bank, we are experiencing a severe escalating violence, military operations, and severe movement restriction that disrupting the access to education. Nowadays, Israeli is putting checkpoints all over the villages and cities, preventing people from moving from city to city, and uh, by that, many children have been deprived from reaching schools and have the proper education. Uh, Students and school staff face increasing protection risks, including settler attacks, harassments at checkpoints, delays and detentions, and weapon related incidents near schools. Violations against education have intensified, including schools demolitions and repeated disruptions to the learning process. All these conditions continue to undermine safe, consistent access to education across many areas of the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Children with disabilities, or let me highlight that despite that we have in Palestine inclusive education policy, most schools remains unfortunately physically inaccessible and lack assistive devices, lack the inclusive learning materials and trained staff. In addition, children with intellectual disabilities, including autism, continue to face severe exclusion from mainstream education settings, contributing to interrupted learning and long-term educational marginalization. As a result, most children with disabilities experience low educational attainment and limited access to future opportunities. Unfortunately, here in Palestine, by law, people who have intellectual disabilities uh, don't have or prevent from attaining schools. Here in CPR, through our partnerships with Abife and other friends, we succeed to develop a lot of community centers that provide special education for children with intellectual disabilities and also rehabilitation interventions. We can say that the main obstacles that is affecting access to education under occupation or under conflict is always, and we can summarize it in 5 points: the restrictions on freedom of movement, destruction of schools and educational institutions, increased economic burden. You know, in marginalized local communities, people have to go through a long distance, and most of the transportation are not accessible, and it is very costly. So the increased economic burden affecting families from sending their children to appropriate educational settings. Displacement, we witnessed a lot of places in Jenin, Gaza, Tulkarim, Nablus, Tubas. The occupation has displaced thousands of people out of their homes, and also the killings of students and academics. To zoom in on the situation of education more, allow me to represent three cases. The first one is Masafer Yatta, the second, Jenin refugee camp, the third one is Gaza Strip. As for Masafer Yatta, it is located in Area C in the south of the West Bank in Hebron, and it faces on a daily basis movement restrictions, daily checkpoints, blockades, restrictions have eat into all the lives of students and faculty, and these restrictions are exacerbated for children with disabilities, considering they have to travel further distances to reach their schools for the lack of inclusive educational institutions in the area, and also, as I mentioned earlier, the lack of accessible transportation. Masafer Yatta is also facing demolitions. There are more than 18 communities that are risk of demolition, including schools, leaving students and teachers stranded on days of demolitions. Thus, there is less money is put into making these places accessible since it would still be under threat of displacement even after being rebuilt. And I think we all see videos about settler violence, the rising settler violence and coercive measures have forced the internal displacement of several communities in Masafir Yatta, entirely disrupting formal education pathways for vulnerable children, including children with disabilities. While all children try to escape and steer away from settlers, children with disabilities might find heightened difficulties doing so because of their disability. As for the case of Jenin camp, uh, there are more than 20,000 refugees has been displaced before I think 1 year. The people of Jenin refugee camp are currently not allowed to go back to their homes under Israeli military decisions, leaving them unable to reach their schools or homes. And due to this, there is increasing economic burden, definitely due to the displacement and property damage. Families from Jenin camp are unable to send their kids to schools in the areas they are displaced to. And because shelter and survival is definitely more essential in terms of spending. As for Gaza, I think the whole world witnessed what happened in Gaza. It's the collapse of all formal education systems. After the genocide, there is a severe devastation in the strip. Student in Gaza, all the students in Gaza, I can say, is no longer have any school to go to. And in the cases where the school survived, it is most probably is being used as a shelter for the displaced families, not for educating our students. The killing and intentional targeting of students, teachers, and academics in Gaza have been targeted by either killing or imprisonment. After this dark image, Basser tried its best to, through CBR, to use different strategies to mitigate the crisis that is facing the right of children with disabilities to access to education. These strategies includes online learning, enhancing accessibility, education initiatives, and infrastructure and rebuilding. As for the online learning, we can say that the positive side of it is there's no checkpoints. Students will not be held at gates. There's no transportation fees, and no one will be targeted by nearby settlers on their way to schools. As for the negative sides, crowded households keep students from concentrating on their lessons, and technology usually the technology needed is usually expensive, especially for poor families. Um, and CPR tries to provide families with assistive technologies such as tablets, smartphones that have accessibility features, including accessibility form of the Palestinian school curriculum. And we try to train the families of children with disabilities on the use of these assistive devices and assistive technology and available accessibility features for the educational purposes. We always do home visits by our CPR workers that are located in different local communities to follow up on the online learning process and how it can be improved or enhanced. The second strategy is enhancing accessibility. We have a good partnership with the Ministry of Education to support inclusive education and improve access for children with disabilities. We conduct early childhood disability screening and develop referrals to ensure timely educational and rehabilitation support. We try to adopt as much as possible the schools. We do environmental accommodations and adapted schools infrastructure. And also, as Sandrine mentioned, we adopt educational tools and learning materials to improve accessibility and inclusion for our children with disabilities. The third strategy is implementing educational initiatives. Due to increased displacement rates in Palestine, many children are unable to attend schools regularly and access formal education. Thus, in response, bussers through CPR program implemented alternative and non-formal education initiatives to support the continuity of learning in marginalized and displaced community in the West Bank. These initiatives combined educational and recreational activities with mental health and psychosocial support, services to support children's well-being and resilience. Activities were implemented in many communities, including Kermel, Masafir Yatta, Ramadin, Jenin, Tubas, Nablus, targeting children affected by displacement and restricted access to education. The fourth strategy is infrastructure and rebuilding. Whenever they destroy schools, whenever they destroy or affecting community centers, we try to rebuild it. So supporting the rebuilding of destroyed schools and educational infrastructures to ensure the restoration of safe and accessible educational environment, and always advocating for the protection of children's right to education through raising local and international awareness on the impact of conflict, attacks on education infrastructure, displacement, and movement restrictions on children's access to safe, inclusive, and the continuous of learning process. The lessons learned from the whole process or experience is the importance of decentralization and the importance of localized services, strengthening alternatives and non-formal learning approaches whenever possible, build the capacity of local communities and education actors, promoting inclusive and accessible education, viewing crisis as necessity for transformation. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Maran, for giving us, a genuine state of the situation in Palestine that is, well, as we all know, alarming to say the least. And for all the lessons learned and everything that you've put into place with the needs that you had. So yeah, thanks once again for being with us today. And so now we are gonna get to the questions in the audience. I think that so far we don't have that many questions online. But are there any questions in the room? Yeah.
Merci. In English or in French? It's not a question, but it's a contribution.
Go ahead.
OK. Thank you very much. Mais je voudrais m'exprimer en français, si vous le permettez. Et je suis quelqu'un de terrain, donc quand je vois la présentation sur accès équitable en éducation, je pense toujours à là où j'ai servi, et plus précisément au niveau de la zone nomade au Niger. Parce que l'éducation dans les zones nomades, comme vous le savez, pour moi, je dis c'est une éducation qui est toujours en période d'urgence. Parce qu'il faut le vivre pour voir comment ces enfants, le terme me manque pour qualifier, quand je regarde un petit enfant ou une petite fille qui devait, elle, assurer le rôle, je dis bien le rôle de la maman. Donc, ça veut dire quoi? Elle n'a pas ce droit d'aller à l'école. Elle meurt d'envie. Quand j'étais coordonnatrice du projet, quand je partais dans ces petites communautés Peul, Wadabé, je vois comment les filles, c'est elles qui sont laissées dans les campements, leurs parents migrent pour aller chercher. Et le parent, qu'est-ce qu'ils font? Ils laissent les petits-enfants et ils les laissent avec des vieilles personnes. Et quand tu as une fille dans ta maison, dans ta famille, c'est elle qui est responsable de tous les autres petits frères. Elle ne peut pas aller à l'école. Donc, c'est elle qui doit cuisiner, c'est elle qui doit s'occuper des enfants. Je voudrais, si vous le permettez, vous donner une petite expérience sur ce qui m'a motivée un jour. Et grâce à UNICEF, j'ai eu un financement à l'époque qui m'a permis de mettre en place un dispositif et qui actuellement est en train de donner fruit. J'ai trouvé, c'était en plein froid, dans les déserts. Quand il fait froid, il fait vraiment froid. J'étais partie en mission, moi j'étais sur mon lit pick-up, sortie du véhicule comme ça avec les autres collègues, et j'apercevais une petite fille bororo avec 3 de ses petits frères. Ils dormaient sur les sacs de riz vides. Et c'est ça aussi qu'elle prenait les autres pour couvrir ses petits frères. Je n'ai pas dormi. Le matin, j'étais pressée de lui demander où sont tes parents. Elle dit, ils sont partis. On nous a laissés ici. J'ai dit, où? Il y a un puits, c'est la référence, le puits. Le chef du village, il a sa tante, il y a le puits, et puis on me dit, c'est une école. D'accord. Les enseignants ne veulent pas rester. Parce que c'est vraiment, comme on dit, remote area of Niger. Que vous pouvez imaginer. Les salaires ne viennent pas. Quand l'enseignant part chercher le salaire, il peut mettre 2 semaines. Vous voyez? Et aussi dans la zone nomade, quand on vous dit c'est la rentrée scolaire, ce n'est pas le 1er octobre. La rentrée là-bas et la rentrée dans la ville de Niamey, c'est différent. Parce qu'ils ont leur pratique culturelle. Il faut faire le warso, comme on dit. C'est vrai, j'ai monopolisé, mais ça va, je peux continuer? En fait, oui, je vais faire vite. Très malheureusement, je voudrais en fait relier au calendrier, la problématique du calendrier scolaire, les zones nomades et les zones sédentaires. Et jusqu'à présent, dans les politiques, j'étais ministre, ça me choque, je ne peux pas ne pas parler de ça, mais je n'ai pas changé grand-chose. Parce que j'ai connu le terrain et je connais les réalités politiques, des fois qui sont influencées, qui ne tiennent pas compte aussi des réalités du terrain. Donc tout ça, quand on pense à ça, je dis, l'équité là n'est pas pour maintenant. Il nous faut beaucoup pousser, il nous faut beaucoup travailler et il nous faut surtout de volonté. Parce que ceux qui conçoivent les politiques, des fois, ne connaissent pas ou bien ils ferment les yeux sur les pratiques nomades. Parce qu'ils sont des sédentaires. Je vous parle de la réalité au Niger. Moi, je suis sédentaire. Mais c'est parce que moi, j'ai été dans la zone et j'ai connu ça. Et peut-être le fait que mon mari aussi est de la zone nomade m'a beaucoup influencé. Mais quand je viens au ministère, je parle de l'éducation nomade. Il y a beaucoup qui disent que ça coûte très cher. Mais pourtant, avec l'UNICEF, avec ACDI, je me rappelle, j'ai obtenu des financements. On a construit des dortoirs. Et ces enfants qui sont laissés, le PAM a amené les vivres pour les stabiliser. C'est pour dire qu'il suffit de donner une chance. Il suffit vraiment de prendre en compte les réalités du terrain pour que cette équité dont on nous chante, dont on nous parle, soit quelque part respectée. Mais s'il n'y a pas un fort engagement politique, un fort engagement de nos communautés, ça ne peut pas arriver. Et faites participer les communautés à chaque fois que vous voulez intervenir. Merci.
Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, madame. Juste avant de reprendre en anglais, je vais vous dire, vous dites, vous n'avez pas fait beaucoup, mais on dit quand on sauve une vie, on sauve le monde. Alors, vous avez sauvé le monde. I'll try to summarize in English for those who couldn't follow. It's going to be hard because it was a very rich comment. Very thankfully, the ladies share about the reality because we talk about inclusion and we're doing it here in a very comfortable seat at Enabel in Brussels. Mahan is in Palestine, may have to evacuate in a minute, nobody knows. And you were sharing about the difficulties in the north of Niger, where you were a teacher there at some point and could work with some remote community, Pearl communities, where really, I'll go with the main points, but mostly the girls were excluded from a very young age. You could have very young kids, like 5 years old, taking care of the other two youngest ones, sleeping on rice bag at night in the desert, but it's really hot in the day, but the desert at night is really, really cold. Some were abandoned even. You saw these little girls and two brothers abandoned by their parent close to the well so they could drink, but left alone all day. And this is the reality. So it's true, it's hard to when we say equity, we know those realities. I know other realities. I've been spending 20 years of my life in the field. I've seen recently the camps of Kakuma, classes with more than 220 children, one teacher. And we're talking about individualizing for each one. I think it's very true. And like you said also, we keep saying it's very, I really like what you say, it's very, everybody say, oh, it's too expensive. We're not going to spend that money for those remote community. It's too complicated. And the lady was sharing that with a little money that she could get from UNICEF, she could already build a place and support those children. So I don't think it's always as expensive as we think it is. And I think you said it's really important to work with the community because they know best. True for the calendar. You also talk about the fact that schools start maybe in November in Yamé, but it's different in very remote area because parents have to go do the crop or whatever. It's different, and I think it's a lesson for all of us that solution have to be local. We don't know. We're here, we don't know. And I think it showed really well in the presentation of Mahan as well. I think I'm always so impressed by Palestine in general, because I think most educated and wonderful people. But also, education is so important that it always continue whatsoever, and communities find ways in the most difficult situation. Bassar and all those people, all those communities have found solution. When NGO arrives, they are already community initiatives. So rather, I mean, I think it's the guidance to follow what the communities are doing and to support them. It's the direction to go anyway. Thank you so much for your
Very much.
testimony.
And thank you, Sandrine, for translating. You did way better than I could have ever done. So thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to thank you for the theme. I think it's very interesting to talk about inclusion and rethinking on the way to to redo things in a better way. And today I've learned that inclusion is not just like including those who are have incapacities, but it's also including those uh, who maybe finished education at the primary stage or secondary stage and lack financial abilities to continue. Those who are desperate, maybe those who lost hope, and maybe the young girls who are forced to stay in the family zone with the younger ones because the parents aren't there. And I wanted to just ask on the aspect of training. like in the mode of recycling. Because if you are talking about rethinking, we have to think about the future. And I think one of the best other ways is recycling. Like in Cameroon, I can see those who have incapacities, like on wheelchairs, those who can't see. They are very proficient in art. They do that, like, because I've understood that if you have an incapacity, it means you're best. They are mostly best in what they do. For the blind, he has a good sense of order, a good sense of details in what they do. And why not place maybe the attention on those aspects, and those who finish school at primary and secondary school, why not take base ourselves on what they know? Because I think that if you finish primary school, you can calculate 1 plus 1 is 2, and those little things, and maybe start from what they know in order for them to get more confidence, and then keep on slowly. Because if maybe you're in a zone of conflict and the teacher is sent to you, the teacher will not come and teach you chemistry, carbon plus oxygen. No, I think that the teacher should be based first in recycling on what you know, what you can do, what you're passionate about, what you have in your hands. Because some of them, they will say, we have a farm. I have a farm in my name, or I own this bag and I can sell it, or I want to learn this art, but I don't have a way to do. And if we can recycle it or help them recycle, they can gain money, maybe to migrate or help their kids, or maybe later accompany their kids and all their communities to keep on with the project, and in order to change things and include other people around them. So it was, and my question was to ask if there are projects on recycling for the future, if there are already projects that are going on. I wanted to know.
And so what you're asking is that every different formation that you can find would first adapt to the kids and to the kids' skills
Yes.
to begin with, and then build up with that.
Yes,
Okay.
build up with that.
Um,
And if there are projects or subventions for that, if there are already projects working
right.
on
Right.
this aspect.
Thank you. Maybe I can start, and then I will let Mahan respond, because I think Gaza are hero of recycling. I've seen recently a video where children were playing in a swimming pool in a camp in Gaza because they viewed a plastic, and they made a hole in the sand and put water in it so kids could have a small swimming pool. I think they will know better than me sorting my my rubbish. I think it's super interesting what you said. There's several elements, so maybe I won't make a holistic response to everything. I think it's coming with climate change, disintegrate more and more the curriculum, for example. And I think in terms of training of teachers, uh, it's really important, and some of it is done already because I see people from VVOB. VVOB is doing a lot on the targeting at the right level, TAR activities, so really trying to go from what the children know. I guess same for the teacher training, and indeed it's really important. A small point on inclusive education. When we do training to teacher, for example, there's one of my favorite module is creating teaching and learning material, and we never import anything. We use what we find in the place we are teaching, and it might be a nature of element. It can be if the teacher is talking about nature and for example about a a chicken.
Okay. That kind
Sorry,
of pool, yeah.
about a chicken, they will just bring the chicken in the class. Can you imagine, for kids? Much more interesting than whatever picture or explanation. So I think we're just trying to use always what's there. It can be recycled material as well to do. We can do Montessori in very low resource. Of course, we don't have the 10,000 very expensive material, but still, you can do it with cardboard and it works exactly the same, except the beauty, but it works. Um, and you can reuse it, and if it's low quality you can recreate it because you have these resources around. So I think it's a very good point, Ingrid, that you wrote. Thank you very much for that. I don't know, Mahan, if you want to intervene.
Yeah, I think it's an important question because unfortunately Israel is preventing the entrance of any raw materials,
Yeah.
especially cement, preventing us from building what has been destroyed. And yes, people nowadays are using what is existent and recycle for the purpose of building their homes, schools, and I think also people now, and actually we have take training on how to use cartons to do assistive devices for children with disabilities. So yes, people nowadays are using anything to create what is possible in this situation.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to complete what Marhan said, for example, for HI, we also work on rehabilitation, so we're also trying to get some material in with a lot of difficulties. And just know that scissors simply are not allowed. Very difficult for teacher, obviously, for health people. Like you don't even have scissors in hospital. You can't get them in.
Yes.
Bonjour tout le monde. Désolée pour mon français, mais je suis italien. Voilà. Moi, j'ai une question. Aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup de disparus, non? Tra pays du Nord et pays d'Afrique, Palestine, etc., etc. Moi, une question. Comment vous affrontez con l'éducation, parce qu'aujourd'hui, con l'impact d'intelligence artificielle, tu as vu? Ici, déjà, les jeunes utilisent l'intelligence artificielle. De l'autre pays, il n'y est pas encore. Moi, je suis data analyst, non? J'ai analysé tout ça. Comme on dit, je voulais faire collégamment de madame sur l'impact local. Comment vous affrontez sur l'éducation l'impact local, qu'il y a des fois, il n'y a pas d'électricité, il n'y a pas de... Comment on fait affronter une éducation online? Par exemple, si vous faites l'éducation online, tu as besoin d'électricité la première fois. Deuxième, aujourd'hui, comme on dit, l'intelligence artificielle, parce que des pays du nord d'Europe ont utilisé l'intelligence très bien et de l'autre pays pas. Comment vous intégrez sur les générations des enfants pauvres pour l'intelligence artificielle? Parce que l'éducation aujourd'hui, c'est très importante. OK? Moi, je suis Patricia, j'ai étudié, je suis data analyst. Comme ça, les enfants, ils comprennent qu'est-ce que, non? Et c'est ça mon question. Désolé, hein, pardon pour mon accent français.
No, no worries. We're gonna just translate for the whole room.
Yes.
So there are two different questions in what you're asking. The first one is how to actually build online education in places where you don't necessarily have either electricity or internet. So that would be the first part of your question, right? And the second one is how to involve and integrate IA in all this, where the ways and the means of accessing it are really different depending on when you are on the globe. Okay, thank you.
I think maybe we let Mahan respond for the first one on digital,
Yeah.
because I know Gaza is
Yeah.
facing a lot of
I
interruptions.
think there's a huge difference between what is going on in Gaza and what's going on the West Bank. there's no comparison between them. On Gaza, yes, the phone is very, very expensive because there is no phones is coming into Gaza since 3 years. Yes, the internet is always disconnected. We have staff in Gaza. We barely can uh, connect them and talk to them. It's not easy, and the whole process of education is interrupted. But in the West Bank, yes, we have internet, and through a national organization like Basser, we try to provide iPhone, iPad, smartphones. We provide trainings for families and students, for the families, and we also try to train the staff on the process of online learning, and we keep follow up on the whole process and what is needed. We always try as much as possible to respond. But yes, we try to allocate budgets for providing people with iPads, assistive technology, assistive devices, and sometimes we pay for the transportation costs in order for people to go from town to town to get their education. But for the online learning, yes, we have a very good experience in the West Bank by providing people the tools, the means, and also the required trainings.
Great.
Maybe
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll complete with one thing, and we're coming to closure soon, so I'll try to be quick, but we can talk later. It's a very important point. For sure, there are differences everywhere in the world. When people say, "Oh, I want to do this digital thing in the lake area in Chad," I'm like, "Is there any electricity? Do you have access to solar panel? Solar panel? Otherwise, it's going to be complicated." And also, another inequity that we never think about, but we went through it really during the COVID crisis. Most of the digital solutions that were put in place were not accessible to people with disability. Or countries were like, yeah, we're using the radio so everybody can go to school. Well, except if you're deaf, really, because radio doesn't work. So there's not one fits all. And I think, again, we should listen to local population who know better what to do. But a lot of use of smartphone as well to pass on information by teachers as well. Maybe very quickly on
Yeah,
the
and
second
yeah, go ahead.
part, which
Yeah,
was, and I
about
forgot,
use of
AI.
Yeah.
Very quickly, a lot of dangers because it's used to recruit students. It's used for harassment online of girls, for example, for exploitation. It can be for false, fake information to destabilize. Many danger. This is, for example, at HI, a topic that we're really working on. I have a colleague, Fanny Tari, who's been working at training her teams to pay attention to those risks. But you're completely right. It's to take into consideration. Sorry for the quick answer.
No, no. Thanks a lot. Oh, no, sorry. I have mine. Sorry, I don't need the mic. Thanks a lot, everyone. I'm sorry we're getting a little short on time. So unfortunately, this was the last question. I'd like to warmly thank our two presenters here today. So Soleil and Mahal, because well, you've brought a lot today. I think everyone learned a lot. Also, I did too, actually. So yes, I'd like maybe a last round of applause for our two presenters because you both have been amazing today. And Maran, sorry,
No,
I have a really bad
Manal, I'm
pronunciation.
sure, is behind because she's a colleague
Yes.
of
Yes, voilà, c'est.
Manal is always here.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for today and for this session. I think it's been really insightful for everyone. And so now, for the closing session, I invite you all to go to the Soconi room. Yeah, voilà, for the final session. You are
Thank
all
you all.
welcome there.
You've
Thanks
been
a
an
lot.
amazing audience. Thank you very much.